Good morning, everyone. This is Denise Broom from the Engineering CAD Systems office, and welcome to this week's Weekly Wednesday webinar. This week we're going to talk about the Linked Data Manager. Commonly around our office it's LDM. So if you hear us say LDM, that's what we're talking about. LDM is a tool that we had developed that is used to link external data to our MicroStation files, and to do it in such a way that it is efficient and easy to use. The types of files that we can include are, for right now, they are ASCII text files, .txts. We can also use Excel files, which are the XLSX files, as well as CSV files. So I'm going to jump into MicroStation and go ahead and have a look at what we have. Alright, you can get to LDM through our menu. It's on Actions, and we've added it in here below Sheet Navigator. So there's the FDOT Linked Data Manager. Okay. First thing, of course, that you'd want to do is to be able to link the file. We have several icons up here, and throughout today's presentation I'll be getting to all of these different links. The first one is to create a new link, and this is where the bulk of what you need to know and how it works is at. It's within this link information dialog. So the first thing that I need to do is, like I said, I need to link a file to my design file. I can do that in two ways. I can create a file from a template, and I'll go ahead and open that up. If I'm in the roadway direct workspace, actually if I'm in, at the moment, if I'm in any workspace except for right-of-way, I'm going to get these same options for text notes, summary boxes, and data boxes. Right-of-way has, if I was in the right-of-way workspace, they have some text notes as well as some data boxes, but they don't have any summary boxes. And to note, okay, so I have three different options, and I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate a few of these. The first one, let's say I wanted to some kind of notes. So I can come in here and I can select one of these general notes. All of these text files that you see are all files that we have been supporting. They are in the, they've been there forever. You guys already have these. They are in the resources, I think it's notes directory. But it's out there. So these have all been pulled into another directory so that LDM can find them and use these different files. So I'm going to use this general notes, and I'm going to tell it OK. It's going to ask me to save it, and it wants to find the file within my working directory. Where you place this file is up to you. If you wanted to create, let me see, I was playing with this. If you wanted to create a directory for all of the files that you were using, then you would go in here and create that directory and place it there. Wherever you place it is fine. It's going to remember it. And I just noticed a question. It says, I just looked and I do not see this utility under the sheet labeler. Okay, that's something I guess I should have brought up first. This tool is not yet available. As soon as our MR comes out, which we are hoping for today, but cross your fingers, we'll find, hopefully it'll all go out, but as soon as our MR goes out, you guys will have this tool within the FDOT menu. Let me get those words out. Okay, so it's coming very, very soon. Okay, so I go ahead and I save the file wherever that I want to. Another thing that I want to bring up, just because it has a file name that's already here, unlike some of the other programs that we have, for example, some of the summary boxes, if I use that application in order to populate the information into a summary box, you know, where you can edit the Excel file and then place the text. Okay, I have to have that file open, and I also have to have that file named a certain name. This tool does not have those limitations. I can name it anything that I want. I can Denise General Notes, and I can save it anywhere that I want. This is going to hopefully be beneficial to you. Once I use if I use a template, then it's going to give me the source path as well as give me the description. Okay, so that's my source file. This is one way to do it, and I'm going to go back through in a minute and show you a different way. So this is one way. So once I have the file that I want to link, then I have to come to the graphics settings part of my dialog. I have three different options: FDOT, which is the settings that we provide. There is a site settings, that is something that you can modify, and I'll get into that. Takes a little bit of setup, as well as project. You can create settings just for this particular project. And when I talk about settings, I'm talking about setting your font, setting your, in the case of text, you can set the text style. You can set the text type, text width, line lengths, any of the formatting just about that you see in Excel. All of those are brought across with it, except in the case of text font. If you're using text files, it's all in this graphic settings file. But those can all be set, and so if you have something particular that you want different from what we provide, then you can come to the project, or as a company as a whole or a group, you can create your own site settings. For FDOT, we have a standard file that you can you just come in here, click on standard, and it'll set the levels and the font and the text heights and all of that for you. Okay, the last little section down here is using the plot scale. If I toggle this on, then it will place my text at whatever my plot scale is, and in this case it's set at 50. If I toggle on use update graphics on file open, then when I open my file, what it'll do is it goes behind the scenes, it checks my Excel file, it checks that link within my design file, make sure that it's current, matches, before it opens up your file. So if you have a lot of files or have some CSV data that's in there, this you may or may not want to turn on, because if you have a lot of summary boxes in that particular file, it's going to check all of them, and there are times when that can take some time. You'll see a pause when you go to open up the file, and that's just something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and toggle it on. This last option is lock graphics. If I want to lock the graphics so that I cannot modify it in any way by MicroStation, then I would click this on. And I'm not going to, because there's some other things that I want to show you. So those are the options. So once I have everything in here, I'm going to tell it OK. It will place either the summary box or the text, whatever data I have, on my cursor, and I place it in the file. Okay, you'll notice that it puts, it's whatever your highlight color is, it will highlight that particular box, and as I get more and more in here, you're going to see that that's going to be very helpful to know it, because it shows you exactly where it is. There's different things that I can do. Let me go ahead and hit A lot of these, if I right click, you'll see I get a set of options over here. Open source allows me to open up the data file, whether it's the Excel file or the text file. In this case, it's the text file. I can open up that source file by right clicking, and it's going to bring it up. And mine are set to Ultra Edit. You can set it to Notepad, whatever your text files are set to open with. And I'm just, as an example, just going to delete this line. I can make modifications to that file, and I save it. Okay. Once I get that saved, I can either minimize this or I can even close this so the file is no longer open. I've made a change to the file. Then I can tell it to update. So then I click on Update Now, and you'll notice that line disappeared in here. Okay. This can be done for any text file that you have. It doesn't have to be one of DOT's templates. Okay. Same goes for the Excel files. Okay. So real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab and I'm going to create another link in here. And this time, instead of using the text note, I want to go to summary boxes. And what you'll find in here is all the summary boxes, all of the summary boxes that are contained in the other application. If I go to roadway, summary boxes, all of these summary boxes are included. Okay, and the coordinate data and curve data, and there's another data file. I think it's but anyway, the data files are under data boxes under roadway. We pulled those out away from the summary boxes. But this application where I can place the cell and then edit and place the data, the LDM tool is looking at replacing this particular application. Okay, so let me just pick one. Let me grab one that's pretty easy. I'll grab summary of mailboxes, or here, performance turf. Okay, so I tell it, okay, again, I have to tell it where do I want to save this file. So I'm going to slide down here to my roadway directory, and I'm going to call this SOD 2 because I already have one. And there are cases when you're going to need more than one summary box. If you've got so much in here that it takes up more than one column per se, so it doesn't all fit on the sheet and you have to put in another box. This really will come in handy, being able to rename the file, or, well, let me just go ahead and get beyond this. So I grab the file and I create it from template, and if you'll notice, if I create from template, this worksheet option and this whole row here will be ghosted out if it's from template. If you select one of your own, that's when these will come into play, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. Okay, so now I have my file selected. I can come in here and I'm just going to put in here just a description. It can be anything that you want to put in here. If you wind up with multiple boxes, this description may help you find it quickly. I need to grab some sort of options. I'm going to go ahead and use, let me grab that one. I'm pretty sure I didn't mess with that one. So I'm going to grab, for this example, I'm going to grab a site just so that you can see I can do it. I'm going to tell it to use the plot scale and update the graphics on open and tell it OK. Alright, so it's placed this summary box, which of course I don't have room in the sheet, but that's okay. So I now have this summary box, and I can place it anywhere that I want to. So I place it in my file, and now I can see where it's at. So you can see where it's jumping between the two. If I wanted to know, say I was in a pretty big sheet, or you had multiple sheets and you don't know where that particular summary box is, you can bring up LDM. I can go say the general notes, I want to see it. I double click, or I can right click and tell it to fit. and it will fit that particular box on the screen for me. And I did that by double clicking on the link. Okay. Well, now that I have the link, what next? What do I want to do with this? First off, I mean, if I'm in a summary box, obviously I need to put the data in. So I can tell it to open the source. I can input the information. Let me just put some side left, square yards, 15, and that's preliminary. We usually don't have that. So I could put multiple rows, obviously, of information into here. The other thing about the tool and the way that it works while I have Excel open is that it reads all of the formatting. So when I come in here, you'll see that it has the different, like the dotted lines. I've got the really thick lines out here on the edge. The sizes of my font are different. All of this comes across into MicroStation. As I go through here, you'll see that I can, like the column width, if I can grab a hold of one, I can make this wider, and it will show up wider on within MicroStation. So if I have a lot of information, this particular one probably wouldn't be one that you would move, but if I have a lot of information and it doesn't fit in here like it needs to, I don't have to worry about dropping the cells anymore, modifying it. All I have to do is come in here and modify the rows or height or the column widths, and then save my file, and then come in here and right click and tell it to update now. So this particular column got wider, and it also put my data in 15.2 at station 12. Okay. It does have the total and the Excel links, you know, that where I can go in and I can total all of these up, and you can see it's already into the zeros are showing up in here because I have a formula that's multiplying these two columns of length times width to get the square yards, if I had the information to do that. So a lot of these things are already in the templates that we provide, but you don't, like I said, you don't have to have one of our templates. It's not the only thing that this tool can be used for. Okay, let me zoom out some and just show you some of these other options. A lot of these options you're going to find in more than one location. Delete link. Delete link, what it does is it goes in and it will delete the link, but it does not delete the information or the elements in my file. So if I grab that and I told it I wanted to delete the link, it's going to ask me, are you sure? I'm going to tell it okay, and then you'll notice it's gone from the list, but it's still in my file. At that point, I can do whatever I want to it. Summary boxes, I can imagine you wouldn't want to delete the link. And then I can go in here and I can just delete it. It is a cell that it places with all of the information, so as I update it, it updates everything. It's like the box will go away and then it redraws everything back into the file. I just had a question. It says, can I add columns as well? Yes, you can add columns, you can add rows, whatever it is that you need within the dialog. A word of caution, all of ours that are templates are set up according to the DOT standards. But if you have a file that is all your own, you can do whatever you want to, and it will honor whatever you've done and save it, and once you've saved it, just bring it in. Okay, and I'll go ahead and I'll show you that. If I go into the source path, okay, I want to create another link. This time, instead of creating it from a template, I'm going to create it by going in and selecting an existing file. If I click on Select Existing File, it's going to give me the Select File dialog where I can go in and I can choose which one I want to bring in. So the one that I want to bring in, I'll just bring this one back in again, or I'll bring in the mailbox. Okay, so that's the summary of mailboxes, and I tell it open. Okay, it automatically updates my source path. It doesn't have a description, however. Okay, so what I can do is under the description, just put in whatever I need to. So this is a summary of mailboxes. Okay, and you'll notice that it's an Excel file, so I have a worksheet. Okay, so I can choose which worksheet that I want. So I'm going to tell it sheet 1. The header rows, it tells it how many rows at the top of my dialog. There's a header. And then this width, height, X and Y. Let's see if I can explain this. When you're placing Excel data, the W and the H are obviously width and height, and they work to tell it I've got it to, in other words, it tries to fit it within a certain width, and if it doesn't, it's going to split your table, and it does that through columns. So if I have multiple columns, then it will go in and it'll figure out how many of those columns it can fit within the whatever I define as my W. And then if it has more columns than will fit, then it'll start to put as many as it can, but it won't split a column in half. Okay? Then, so what I need to do is it takes, LDM takes that column, and then it will use this X value from the top corner here, and it'll move over that value, and these are in master units. It'll move over that value and then place the rest of the columns. And it may be, depending on how wide it is, if you had something like a summary of drainage, which we have another tool to do that, but that's just a really good example, where I would need to have multiple sets of columns on multiple sets of sheets, then I can do that and it'll split it up for me. We do not provide defaults for these because it's really pretty much, at least at the moment, we may add them. The height works in pretty much the same way as the width, and hopefully I've explained it so that it makes sense. So for the height, that will go down as far as it can, whatever height I put in here, and then it will break at that row, or if it's text, it'll break, and then it'll go to the next distance of Y. It will go down whatever that distance is. So if my H was, say, 100, I'd want to make my Y bigger than that, because that's where it's going to start the next section of my table. Hopefully that made sense. We do have a help file that may be able to help you understand that a little bit better. Okay, but for this demonstration, I want to go ahead and get this placed into the file. So I tell it, I'm just going to use an FDOT standard, and I'm going to tell it OK. And you'll notice I didn't hit plot scale, and I did that on purpose. So if I go in here, it's teeny tiny. Okay, so if I come back in here and I was like, oh, I just messed up. All I need to do is come in here, select that particular box. I go into the properties, and from here I get right back to that box I was just in. I can change that information and tell it OK. So any of this information that I have up here, the description, setting up whichever graphic settings that I want, all of that I can change and then tell it OK, and it changed it for me. Okay, when I changed it, it didn't come out in the right location, right? It's not on my sheet. I can use MicroStation to move these around. So if I come up here and I say move, grab the box, come on, I grab that box and I put it up here in this corner, okay? As soon as I tell it, I can do this a couple of different ways. I can go to a different one and come back, and it's going to find my summary box. The other option is, if I didn't want to switch to another one, is just tell it update now, and it will find the box again. So no matter what I do in here, it's going to, with MicroStation, as far as moving it around, it's perfectly fine. It will remember and it finds that particular summary box wherever I may place it. One word of caution, speaking of MicroStation tools, is that whenever you place your file, the tool does use true north. So if my file is rotated, let me just go ahead and do this really fast. So say I rotated my file. Okay. And I place a summary box. If I place the summary box, it's going to come out just like this. And I try to rotate this box. And I'm going to grab that end. Come on. Do it that way. Okay, so I rotate the box. As soon as I come up here and I update this, it's going to go right back to the original rotation. So it always uses true north. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And really, we're putting this, most of the time, we're using this for summary boxes, which go into sheets, which generally we don't rotate it. What if someone scales the box? Hadn't really done that yet. I think what's going to happen is you can scale it, but it's going to go back to whatever scale it was. And the reason I say that, and let me rotate my view back, because that will bug me. So see, I just scaled it. It knows what the plot scale is of the file, and it knows how I've placed it. So whenever I tell it to update it, it's going to go back. Where did it go? Hey, maybe we found something. Oh. It scaled it, but when I scaled it, that was the top corner. So whenever I told it to update it, it threw it up here to the top corner, is where it scaled it back to that 50 scale. Because remember, when I placed it, it's either going to place it at a scale of 1, and it remembers where it placed it and what settings it used, or it's going to place it at the plot scale. So either way, it's going to know. If you want it to be larger, I would recommend a couple of things. Either go into the Excel file and modify it, or you can place it at a greater plot scale. Would be the way that I would recommend dealing with if you wanted to scale it. So really the biggest thing that you can do with it without it freaking out, and well, it's not going to freak out, you might, because wait a minute, that's not what I wanted it to do, is I can move it, okay, which is very helpful. Okay, so what's next? All right, the next thing that I want to show you, because I think I've shown you everything with those two types of files. The next thing that I want to show you is the CSV files. And as everyone knows, a CSV file, it has its own type of formatting, and in Excel, let me just open one up. Here's an example of a CSV file. All of my columns are set to a standard column width, my rows, and it's not real pretty, right? I mean, it's all overlapping itself, and it's not what I wanted to do. So what we've done is we got with the developer for the tool, and we said, okay, we need this to be such that I can run this as many times as I want. So I may get the information, and like in this particular case, it's sod slope, which comes out of the criteria. So every time I run my proposed criteria, that may change, and I'll get this, it'll overwrite what I already have. And it's a real waste of time if every time you wanted to link a CSV file into your file, you had to come in here and start playing with all the column widths, and I wanted to come in here and change some of the formatting. I don't want that, say, I want that to be centered, okay? So I can change that, and I can change all kinds of stuff, and instead of having to do that for every single file, the process is a little bit different. Let me double check to see that this one isn't like, no, it's huge. I'm getting running at some of this stuff that's in this file. I thought I'd already done this. I did. I quit. Sorry. Yes. Okay. So, actually, let me just get out of this. Do I want to save changes? No. Alright. And I'm going to get out of that Excel file. So, what I can do is I come in here and I click the existing select file. I have the options. It's set up to look for Excel files, CSV files, or text files. So I'm going to change it to CSV files, and I'm going to tell it to open. Now, what it just did in the background is it created a layout file for me. Let me bring this over. This is being a pain. I had this opened on my other screen. So I just grabbed sod slope ldm.csv file. It grabs that exact same name, and it puts a .layout.xlsx. Okay? So it created that file as soon as I told it I wanted a CSV file. I choose which sheet that I want, which worksheet, okay? And then I can come in here, and I have two options whenever I grab an Excel file. I have open source, which would grab the whatever the source file is, which would be the CSV file. That's not what I want to modify. I want to go in and I want to modify or open the source layout file. It's going to give you this warning, okay, that's telling you that this is only for formatting purposes. Do not try to add information in there, like the data that you need to, don't worry about all of that. This is only for the layouts. And the other thing is to remember that the columns that I had before, like whatever's in my CSV file, I don't want to change those columns, okay, because right now it read my CSV file, so it knows that I have a column for my station, I have a column for my begin and end offset, my line length, and what the slope is. The X's are representing the data that's in my CSV file, okay? I can come in here and add I can insert and say I want to put a title up here. I can go into format cells and I can tell it to, I want to merge those, give it the right font, and I would do this for all of, let me find the font, F. And let's say I wanted to go to FDOT bold. Okay, I can tell it what size do I want. I'm going to tell it 12, and I'm going to tell it title, TLE. Okay, I want that to be centered, so I go in here and format cells, and I go to my alignment and tell it that I wanted it to be centered within that box. Okay, I set the font. I can set the border. This is the border file. The way that the graphics setting works is that depending on which border I tell it, it's going to give it the information of what level and symbology I want to be used when I put it into MicroStation. By default, we do have a standard, and the dashed or dotted lines, these first two, okay, whether it's this one or this one, they will be placed on, we have 3 levels: summary box border or sum box border under bar DP, sum box lines under bar DP, and sum box lines min under bar DP. Okay, obviously the border is the thickest. I think it's a weight of 3. Anyway, it's heavier. You'll see it in a second. If I wanted to put it on the border, I would put it on either this one or this one. Okay, and that's border and bold, which really it's the same level. And then I have for the normal is this border style, and it will use the summary box lines under bar DP, and these two at the top use the summary box lines min under bar DP. Okay, so it translates it over. Unlike I was messing with the Office Importer, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but this tool works similar to the Office Importer, where you can set this up, but if you don't set it, looks exactly. So if I had dotted lines, then it would give me dotted lines. This tool does not do that. It translates how we have that set up. So I'm going to set it to border, and I'm going to set that around those 3 sides and tell it OK. I then come in here and I'm just going to modify all these at one time. Okay. I found I think it's 33 to be a pretty good row height for 33 for my headers. The formatting for the data lines, I recommend 16.5. It'll come out very close to what we have as standard for our summary boxes. So that's, and putting it at a standard, the 0.07 text height and width, that's going to fit and it's going to look good. Okay, if you use about 16.5. Again, I can come in here, I can set, I want to, at the minimum, I want to go in here and set the borders. I would go in and set my alignment. For every one of these, I can go in and set all this information. So for these, I want to use this one, up, down, and on this, no, not, darn it, here, and on the outside edges, I'm going to use the border and tell it OK. And then here, I'm using border. I'm going to use that a little bit thicker. I want to put the border on the outside. And in between my data rows, I want to put the thinner line. Okay, so, and I tell it OK. So my formatting has been set. And like I said, I can change this to numbers. I can change it to set it so that it sets it up so it's centered, left and right. I will say that if I go in here and I tried to go to Format Cells under the Alignment tab, I can tell it I want it center, okay? I can also tell it I want it to be to the left or to the right. And Excel has an indent. The indent is not translated over into MicroStation. Okay, it's a different factor that we need to get into. But I can set that up so that it will modify that, and it will honor left, right, and center. Okay, so I tell that okay. And once I have this set up, then it'll keep this formatting, and then no matter how many times my CSV file changes, it'll always update it using this formatting. Okay, by default, I'm going to save this file, and then I'm going to move this file out of the way. Okay, by default, my header rows was set to 1. Well, I added a title, so now I need to tell it I need 2. So I'm going to change this to 2 for my header rows. I've selected my worksheet. I'm going to give it a description, sod slope values from cross sections. I need to give it a graphics setting. I'm going to set it to standard, tell it to use the plot scale, update on file open, and tell it OK. Now, you see it kind of blinking, and down here at the bottom, if it's a really big file, you'll see this, and I really did this on purpose. I've made it pretty small, but you'll see this start blinking down here. If you have a very large CSV file, it's going to take it time to process it. It's not locked up, it's working, okay? And then once you get it, it figures it all out. I can come in here and you can see that it put all of the data in, and it's using the levels that I wanted it to. In between my rows, it's using the min, which is the thinnest of the summary box lines. My border is set on sum box border. And then these other lines in between are on just the regular summary box lines. Okay? So it did what I asked it to do. And hopefully everyone understood that. Okay, I just got asked a question. I never thought of trying this. Can you hide columns of data in the CSV using the layout format? I don't think so. We can definitely test that theory, but I don't think so. Say, for example, in this one, I wanted to hide this. Let me save it, and then go to here and update. Takes it a second, and it's done. No, I cannot hide them. Because basically it's reading my CSV file all the way across. Let me try one more thing. If I open the source file, where'd it go? I don't think it's going to do it though. No. Okay, so that theory has been tested. It's going to read all of the columns, so if you don't want the column, you'd need to delete the column out of the CSV file before you brought it into this layout. Then it wouldn't even be there. Really the only thing that you could do. Okay, so I've covered most of what this does. I've covered creating the links. I've covered text, Excel files, and CSV files. I've covered setting up formatting within Excel that you can modify just about anything in there, and it's going to change the look and feel of what comes across into MicroStation. I've covered how to delete the link with the graphic. The link settings brings up the link information dialog so that I can change any of this information. I could change the header rows. I could change, if I needed this to break, in other words, it's too big for my sheet, I could set the W, H, X, and Y values to have it break the sheets where I want it to. Remember, those values are in master units or feet. Okay, so depending on what plot scale you're using, those will need to be modified. Let's see. So we got that. Another key thing is that in order to modify the formatting, because you'll get in here the first time and you may get it close to what you want it to be, but a lot of times what I've found in setting this stuff up is that you'll go back in and you'll probably wind up modifying a column width, or for instance, this data here, I don't want it to be out to 4 decimals, I want it to be to 2 decimals. I can go in there and change that formatting. The way I want to change that formatting is not through the CSV file. I want to do that through that layout file. The only way to get to that layout file is in here through the open source layout file if I want to access it from the dialog. I can access it out of, just explore, open up the file in Excel, save the changes, and then come in here and hit update, and you can do it that way as well. But if I want to do it from within the tool, this is the only way to get to it, is to open the source layout file button in the link information dialog. Okay. All right. Now we're going to start getting into some settings. Well, before I hit that, let me grab this last little button, the user settings. The user settings are the use plot scale, update link on open, and the lock elements. Those are the 3 options whenever I go in to create a link that are at the very bottom of my link information dialog. All this tab does is set what defaults I want checked on when I create a new link. Okay, they're just the defaults. It doesn't force it to happen, because I can come in here and create a new link and I can turn these on and off, and then it'll apply to that particular link. Those are just defaults. So in other words, if I always want to use the plot scale, I can go ahead and turn that on through the default group here, and then that's just one less click. Okay, so that's all of these settings except for the project settings. And project settings, I think we've got, let's see the time. I'm going to just close that and close that. Okay. Project settings. Those are the graphic settings. Where can I get to those? Well, if I have project settings, I can get to those using this project settings button, and it'll bring up the project settings dialog. I can come in here and I can set my levels. You'll see it brings up our level list. I can set all of this up. I hit T to get to the T's. I can set, as much of this as I want or as little of this as I want. Okay? I set this information up. This is for the text files that it brings in. Then I have the tabs in here for bringing in my Excel data. So the normal lines, this is where I was showing you before, the normal lines, what level do I want that to come in on? Okay. Dotted lines, what level do I want that to come in on? I'm just grabbing elements just to show. The bold lines, okay, let me grab another one. And my border lines, which one do I want that to come in on? You can set it to anything you want to, okay? I would use it within reason because you guys all know how our standards work. But I can go in here and I can change this information. And I can set this up so that it is project specific for me. I needed to do something a little bit different, so I'm going to set these project settings up. This capability is here. What level do I want my text on? Biggest thing I can think of is that I would want to put the text on a different level. Say I wanted text tables, and I could set it to a different text style if I wanted. Okay. Units. I would use, this is what the program uses when it translates the information from the Excel data and brings it over into MicroStation. And it uses a unit factor. I would leave this Excel unit factor alone. It's set to 0.01. The text size factor, so I can change that. In other words, when it figures out what level, what size my text is, bringing it over from Excel. So say if it's set it, I know that I'm using the FDOT font to get the 0.07. I use a FDOT font. It's multiplying it times the Excel factor, which is 0.01, and then it's multiplying that times the text factor in order to get what I need it to get to. And to get the 0.07, I think we wound up using a text factor of 0.875, I think, and using FDOT font text size 8, okay? Put a 0 in there. Not that it has to have it, but all right. Column width factor, this is just a factor that is going to take my column width and multiply it times. The row height, this one, if you try to figure this out and do the math, the row height you will be able to figure out. Basically, if I plot this at a scale of 1 and I use a row height factor of 1, then whatever it is, it comes out to be like a tenth of it. Okay, so if it was 0.15, then I would set my row height to 15, if that makes sense. And that would come out and give me the 0.15. All right. Column width factor, I've never been able to figure this one out exactly, how it translates my column width over into what I actually get in MicroStation. So this one will probably be trial and error for most of you. If you do figure it out, please call me, because I've yet to find, because it changes. I've done the math and it works for a certain width, and then I get over a certain width and it's like that factor changes, and I haven't figured it out. But the column width, it's just the factor that it uses in the multiplication in order to figure out when it translates over. And the cell padding, this is basically like, think of it as margins within each cell that is going to place it. If I place this at 2, so it gives me a little bit, so if I have it set to left or right, it's not right on the line. The cell padding moves it in away from those lines so that to give you something a little bit better. It just looks better. So, because like I said, it doesn't use the indents. So that's where you would modify this to give it more cell padding or whatever. I have had it where it takes the text and I look in Excel and it looks great, but then when I bring it in, it starts wrapping the text on the lines, and the reason it's doing that is you may want to come back and look at the cell padding. Okay, once I've set all of these options up, I come in here and I tell it File Save or Save As. Okay, I'm going to give it whatever name. You can put this in the roadway directory, or you can come down and put it in the SYMB directory. And I've already created one, but you just save settings, save it as whatever you want it to. You can use the, the project number, whatever it needs to be, and then save that. Okay, and then at another time I can open it, and then those will become, and I can make any changes that I want to in here. No. Okay. So once I've set that, I can come in here and go to my properties, go to project, open it up, and let me go to my SYMB directory. Get far enough down. Select it, tell it to open, and then this is the settings that it'll use and tell it okay. I don't know if that's really a big difference. Yeah. I modified that so that you could see I changed the colors. So you could see that I changed something in it. Okay. So now it's changed the settings. So that's the way to get to it through the dialogues, and I've got 5 minutes. What if I want to set these up on a site type basis? All right. This is where you get into the configuration of where's all this stuff at. If I want to use a site settings file, okay, first thing is that the tool is under apps, LDM, and this FDOT.LDM.XML, and then .roadway and .rw for right-of-way. Those 3 files, depending on which workspace you're using, are the FDOT standards. There is an FDOT.LDM.SiteSettingsXML file out there as an example for you to use. Okay? So the first thing you want to do is you'd want to go in here and set this up the way that you want it. I'm sorry, it's read only. Let me do this. Properties. Let me take that off. Makes it a little easier to read. Okay. The way this is set, and it is very, very particular. So I have my site settings. And if it's a site settings file, it has to say site. Okay. These are the Excel information. This is the levels that it's using for the text, the levels that it's using for the different lines. So it's basically the same information that was in that dialogue we just went through, only it's in an XML format. And I can modify this however I want to, need to, and save it wherever you want to save it to. Okay? Just remember where you saved it. Alright, and the example that I've done is I have an X drive, and I saved this file. I created my own, and I saved that file out to my X FDOT custom, and I have the LDM site settings XML file sitting out there for me to use. Okay, when I set that, in order for the tool to know where it's at, to use it, I have to set a MicroStation configuration variable. That configuration variable needs to be set up in the custom vars.txt file, and that should be located wherever your FDOT 2010 directory is on the server. It's going out there to the site, so it should be out there on your server. If you're running a workspace, it'd obviously be under the C drive. But it's wherever your FDOT 2010 directory is, workspace, users. I have a custom vars.txt. Inside of this, and some of you guys probably are already using these, some of you may not be, but this is your variable, FDOT_LDM_site XML, and then path it out to exactly where it is and the name of the settings file. Once you've set that up, if you've in MicroStation, you want to get back in so that it will read the custom vars and set this variable. Okay, and then after that, you should get the site settings. Oops, I closed LDM. Linked Data Manager. I think I closed it. There we go. After that, I can then go into my links, click on site, and I now have options. Okay, so consultant XYZ, tell it okay. And now it's got different colors again. I used purple and pink that time. Just to show that you could see that it's using different settings is the only reason I did that. But that's what you would need to do. You need to create the site settings dialog and the site settings file out there somewhere on the server, set the configuration variable to look for that XML file, and then reopen MicroStation so that it reads the custom vars.txt file to get that configuration variable set. All right. Well, you guys have a absolute wonderful Wednesday, and hope you have a good rest of your week, and we will talk to you guys next week.